Thank you. As you said, I'm Susie Christensen, founder of Busy Bee Studios, and also on the in the chat window there is going to be Mitch Chahetsky. He's our lead developer. So if you have any specific technical questions, he's definitely your guy. What I'm going to be really talking about is more of a business focus and overall should we develop for Windows focus. I'm not going to be showing you any code or getting into development. We are going to be talking about some tools in a general sense, but I'm really looking at trying to help answer the question of is this worth it? What are the different challenges overall? Again, not looking at a developer standpoint, but just a business and management side from the whole experience. So quickly, we're going to be talking about who we are, how we got started in the app market, and sort of a general how and why of moving to Windows 8. Again, including some of the tools. We're going to talk about experiences with the platform in terms of app performance, support from Microsoft, the store experience reporting tools. So if there are any marketers or analytics people out there, we can touch on that very briefly. User support in terms of user support, customer support on our end. And we'll share some really general metrics for our app ZooTrain, which is the focus here, comparing our sales in all three markets. And we're no different from most developers. We don't want to share hard numbers, but I can certainly give you some kind of comparison so you could see how our app compared to the three different platforms. So that might be interesting. And then ultimately, I'm really trying to answer the question, should we jump in? It looks like there's a pretty, based on the poll, there's a good even split about people who are already in the market, who are thinking about it. So this is really for someone maybe who's thinking about it, who's starting to jump in, and also we can answer some expectation questions about what's going to be happening down the road. So first, a really brief introduction to Busy Bee. We are kids educational game producer. Right off the bat, that puts us in a specific category of education. It puts us in a demographic where we're targeting young kids. We're not talking about grown-ups here, except for parents. And our conversation today is really qualified in that direction. We have that kind of defined narrow target with its own challenges from maybe a general game or a productivity app or whatever else people here might be building. I started the company in 2007. We basically have been doing websites, web-based games, all built. Well, we started out building primarily in Flash. Now that's pretty much gone, so we're moving to HTML5. But that's what we've been focusing on. We've been going strong since 2007. I should point out that we're a really small group. We have sort of a pool of 8 to 10 people, but the apps that we're talking about here are really essentially done by a core of 3 people: a developer, an artist, and then me. I do the project management, I do the sound design, and sort of the concepting. So the reason we even entered into that market in general is because of my own personal experiences with my twins, who are now 5. But by the time they were about 2, this is when the iPhone had exploded and the iPad was just coming out, and they were at the age where they started playing around with these devices. And I was trying to find good apps for that demographic, and it's a different landscape now, but at the time it was really hard to find a good quality app. So we thought, well, maybe that's a niche we can fill. Mitch was interested in moving towards that area and learning about it, and we jumped in really as a side project with no expectations, just to see what's involved, how does it work, and use my 2 kids as in-house testers, which was very helpful. So Mitch built the first app, ZooTrain, in Xcode. We basically built art in Illustrator. We did some can animations in Flash using exported ping sequences. Mitch did some dynamic animations with core animation, which is part of the Apple API, and then laid out all the game screens in Interface Builder, which is part of Xcode. The development time was 9 months. It's the longest development time we've had on an app, but again, it was our first foray into the field. We were doing it while we kept our own regular projects going on the side. So it took a significant amount of time, again, compared to our other titles. So ZooTrain came out in December of 2010. And I thought it might be helpful, just before we move on, just to give a feel for the app. This is a 60-second demo, just to give you a sense of the level of interaction. Again, looking at our demographic, looking at what our product is to frame the rest of the conversation. So this is a 60-second demo for ZooTrain, and here we go.
The gorilla. The gorilla.
B
U.
B-U-S. Bus.
Bus. I spell S-T-O-P. Go to be a dolphin. A dolphin. Dum 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 dum. The train tracks. Train tracks? Yeah. Tracks is good.
Standing.
Standing. A starting. Ooh, a star. Star. Twinkle star.
Star.
A star is happy. A train.
So Zoo Train quickly did pretty well. It grew enough where we saw a viable business in the app world, and so we decided to keep going. So you can see on the screen here our next couple titles. We did a game called Bug Games and then one called Giggle Ghosts, again targeted for the preschool, all initially targeted for iOS and built in the same way. So by the time these two came out, Zoo Train had definitely grown into a solid revenue stream. We had seen it basically live in the top sort of 30 of the Apple education category, and we had a lot of requests from people who had seen the videos of Zoo Train, this demo included, on YouTube, and gotten a lot of requests from parents saying, please do this for Android, please release for Android. So we thought, we had our eye on Android anyway. We thought this is going to be a good sort of, it's not a safe bet, but we know there's already an established market. So we decided to look to Android to build Zoo Train in. So after sorting through a lot of different options, and this is pretty much Mitch's screen, so you can pop him any questions that you may have about this. But he kind of narrowed the search to Corona and Cocos 2DX. His take on Corona was that it's a nice development environment. The scripting language for Corona, called Lua, is very easy to use. It was very fast. But he felt it was too reliant ultimately on Corona Labs, the company itself, and their server to continue existing, because to compile your raw source code, you actually have to submit your source to this third-party Corona Labs, and then in return you get finished cross-platform builds back. And Mitch wasn't comfortable with that step, and I agreed, and so he looked to Cocos 2DX, which is an open-source cross-platform C++ framework that can be compiled for most major devices. And in comparison to Corona, you keep all your code. You don't have to upload it anywhere. Documentation is not as good, but Mitch has raved about there's a huge Cocos 2D community of developers who have been great at offering support. They answer questions quickly. So though there's not great documentation, it's very much made up for in that community of developers there. So Mitch decided on Cocos 2DX, and ultimately this actually helped us move towards Windows 8 since it very quickly supported it. But moving on to Zoo Train. So we actually built our first app using the Cocos 2DX library. It wasn't Zoo Train, it was not Even Monsters Get Sick, and you can see your little characters down there from that app. That was built from scratch using the Cocos 2DX library, and we published that both to iOS and Android after the process was finished. Everything went really smoothly. It was very painless, so we decided, okay, this is a good tool. We want to use this going forward. Let's rebuild Zoo Train using Cocos and see what happens. So we jumped into the build for Zoo Train, and just as we were completing it, Windows 8 came out. And again, as I mentioned, it was already supported by Cocos 2DX. So with very little additional effort, we were open to just immediately publish to Windows 8. And at the same time, Microsoft had actually contacted us because they had seen Zoo Train perform well in the Apple Store. They were interested in getting it on that platform. So it just seemed like a no-brainer. We decided to jump in and target the Windows 8 market as well. But before we get there, just a brief summary of Android, because what I want to do throughout is kind of compare Android to Windows. So in the Android market, we initially published to Google Play, the other Android platforms, Barnes & Noble's Nook device, the Amazon Kindle, and then Nabi, which is actually it's a kid's tablet. And we're also actually going to be doing to the Toys R Us tablet, to Bayo. But the response for Android has been good. The sales have been steady. They've been less than the Apple Store. And again, I'll share some metrics later. But again, it's steady and it's definitely solid. So the performance in the Android store somewhat met our expectations. We were hoping for it to be as solid as it was with the iTunes store, but the numbers still are too high to discount. And, we're happy with it. The one thing to point out, and this is something that the last speaker kind of touched on, and for us it's been a pretty big but is that there are lots of issues that we see with support of all the multiple devices with Android. There's manufacturer variations, model variations, different screen sizes, We've seen some issues with people having specific resolution settings, multiple user accounts. Since a lot of our users have kids, they have their kids using a secondary account. So these are all things that are all manageable, and we can address these things as we go. But the fact that we have to spend time addressing them just makes our time involvement and resources post-launch just exponentially more costly for us. So that's been something that's been of a concern to us with Android. And it hasn't been the case with Windows 8 actually. But so to Windows 8. So again, Cocos 2DX was our tool of choice that Mitch used. It was a very easy port to Windows. He used the existing C++ code and the Cocos 2DX framework. We took the extra step of adding some Windows 8 specific features, such as there's an improved snap, the snap functionality, which is a very cool feature in Windows 8 that we sort of improved on. The charms bar was something that was really important and cool feature for us because we are targeting kids. In the iPad and actually the Android version of our apps, we incorporate into the app like this little parent area. So it's really easy for kids to sort of explore and go into this parent area and I get emails with all these crazy subject lines all the time. So it's not ideal because we like to really protect what children are getting to online. So with the Windows 8 Charms bar, it let us really isolate that into an area that's not attractive at all for kids. I mean, it's a black bar. It's very functional, but kids don't really gravitate towards it. So that ended up being a very big plus for us, and we incorporated that there. And finally, testing and distribution were very easy, straightforward using PowerShell. So all in all, it was a very smooth process. The store experience, very easy, quick reviews, and they've been so far anywhere from, I think we've had 4 updates, anywhere from a few hours to a couple of days, and they give you good status updates as you move along the chain. So it's really helpful, and the best thing about it are the metrics. I think for anybody who's a marketing person online, Microsoft by far offers the best metrics here, I think, compared to the stores. There's so much great information, and everything is broken out by release. So you can clearly see when you release, a version, you can see if and how it has affected the data that you're looking at. So you can get ratings, for example, ratings with revised ratings. So if you have an issue, let's say with an app, you push up a version 3, and you can see where people may have changed their rating. So maybe they initially rated it a 2 or a 3, and then they change it to a 4. You can see that change, and to me, that's a very helpful metric because you can actually kind of, without being able to reach to your audience, you can see indirectly, you speak to them indirectly and see how those changes are affecting them. You get quality reports, error reports, crash data with downloadable CAB files, daily app usage reports, which is the screen there that you see. And again, note you can see the versions coming out 3 and 4. And one feature that I think is very cool is that there's a little check mark there where you can check subcategory benchmark and see where you fare against other apps in your category. So I kind of chose this because it shows off a little bit that we get a lot of engagement for our app compared to the average. But it's a very cool metric. You get, adoption metrics, including listing page views, downloads. So you can see conversions. You can see who went to your page, looked at the app, and bought it, and then refer URLs so you can see how they got there. And then the normal download metrics, the financial reports, and that kind of thing. So Microsoft's developer support for us has been huge. I mean, they've been a great partner for us. I mentioned earlier that they reached out to us, and we gladly accepted all the help they can get. I mean, they are clearly committed to making this platform work, and I think that they understand and realize that a lot of the platform's success is based on developers like everybody here to provide really great content. So they're eager to provide whatever they can to assist, and I really urge everyone to make full use of these offers and to contact them directly for any help they can get. For us specifically, this has meant direct one-to-one technical support. Patrick was my guy, and I could call him with questions if we had issues, if we had any suggestions, anything. He was very open, and he would even call out of the blue just to check in. So that was amazing. They provided devices, which to a small studio like us is a huge help. I mean, we don't have a lot of capital just to be buying devices all the time, especially with all these different platforms. It's kind of ridiculous, all the stuff I have here right now, but they helped a lot with that. App design reviews, they took a look and offered some features to not only to better integrate with Windows 8, but also to generally improve the content. Testing and then marketing opportunities like this event. Mitch and I just recorded a video for the Hot Apps Cool Devs program last week. And And it's opened the doors to conversations with other partners like Intel, who are also very committed to the success of Windows 8. And then we also got a store feature, and I believe we still, yesterday we had a store feature that's been very cool, and that little graphic there shows that this is a little boasting graphic where you can see Zootrain has bumped itself up to the top of the list. The blue circle shows that it was the 10th highest paid app in the Windows Store at one point. And for us, we don't have a marketing budget. Again, can't stress that we're just a small developer. So we've been doing grassroots marketing up until now. So any of this kind of stuff is huge for us. It's a huge support. I mean, it boils down to a monetary support because this is kind of marketing stuff that you can't buy. So overall, I can't stress enough that we felt like they were true partners. They wanted us to succeed as much as we wanted to, and that was a great experience. So performance, this is kind of tying into what I had said earlier about our issue with Android. Windows is very stable and predictable compared to Android. It's a mature platform. Windows 8 is new, but Windows itself is mature. Microsoft is obviously committed to it. The market feels much more controlled. There's not the Wild West landscape that Android seems to be. So as a result, we have spent much, much, much less time with support for our Windows users versus our Android users. The Android support required is enough where it's a significant consideration for us. With Windows, it's just been negligible. So we really sort of published it and forgotten about it in a sense. And customer support is really important to us. We answer every single email. We address every single suggestion, problem, and we've so far been able to resolve every single one. So we're not ready to hire tech support, and at this point, this is a huge advantage for us. It's a big win over Android. Overall, this is kind of a summary. So clearly with Android, you have a larger user base, but in turn, this creates a lot of the quality assurance issues with all the different configurations. The good, easy to build, again, using Cocos 2DX and testing and deploying were very easy and straightforward. Another significant challenge with Android and iOS is that it's a very noisy store. With Android especially, I don't think that anybody looks at it. You pretty much submit it and it's there. So there's not a lot of quality control, and I think that creates even more noise. So, but we're in the market. It's too significant to ignore, and we're happy being there. With Windows, because of the tools we're using, the cost to publish to Windows 8 was really incremental for us. It was a few hours for creative build and testing, and our ROI has been very good because of that. And the build, again, was easy. We used the same tool for both, so it was really a similar build experience. And stability performance have been great across the board. So clearly, the bad is the user base is smaller first. But the flip side, and something I didn't really think of, is that it's very easy in the current market in the Windows 8 store to get, for a good app, to really rise to the top, to get great visibility, and to help get your branding, your app branding, and your company out there. So it's definitely something to think about, and it's been something that we've been able to leverage. This is a quick peek at the sales comparisons that I mentioned. It's not fair to compare sales today so much, but what I did was I took the first 4 months of Zootrain sales for iOS, for Android, for Windows 8, and I put them into this little pie chart to see how they all compare. So you can see that Android did about 58% of the sales for iOS, and then Windows for us, again, this is the educational market. It's about 20%, 18% of the iOS sales, or you can look at it about 30% of Android sales. But for me, I look at this number, again, because we built, if you look at the green and the red pie chart, we basically had one build for that essentially in Cocos 2DX. So I kind of look at that as one big piece of the pie, and then the blue is a separate one. So if you look at it that way, with one effort, we reached about 80% of the sales we did with iOS. So that's a very good number. The other thing to note with the potentially lower numbers with Windows 8 is there's two things. Number one is our demographic. We're targeting kids 2 to 5. My personal feeling is that most of the early adopters of Windows 8 today are going to be adult users who may not be as inclined to hand over their Ultrabook to their little 4-year-old as an iPad user might. And I think that will change as Windows becomes adapted more and more to a casual user market as more and more apps like ours come out. But today, I think that's maybe a potential challenge. And the other thing is what this graphic demonstrates is that when we first released Zootrain, Windows was literally 1 month old to the public. There's a disadvantage there in that, we released it when it was very new. With iOS and Android, it had been out, the audience had been established for years before we even stepped into the market. So that's another thing that I keep in mind when I look at those Windows numbers, as anticipating that they will go up. So the quick summary here is should we jump in? I mean, for me, the short answer is yes. It's probably clear from the last few slides. For us, it's been very successful. My advice is if you can build your app in a smart way using one of the tools out there where you can build once and deploy multiple times, absolutely don't overlook Windows. There's no reason to. The ROI has been very good. We recouped our cost in the first, I think, 6 to 8 weeks. And since then, the maintenance cost has been just minimal. The market is not nearly as cluttered as it is with the other two, again, because it's new. And the Android and iOS markets they're just really a bear to tackle right now. And if you have a great app, you can really shine in the Windows Store right now. Again, Microsoft very very eager to support production of great content. I would say please reach out to them, see what they can offer. And I really feel that it's smart to think ahead. I think that an early adoption of the platform now is a smart move to get your branding out there at the top. While it's easy to do, and our plan is to do that and to keep writing it as it grows. And as we go forward, that's our plan. We're going to be building all our future apps in Cocos TDX. We're going to be publishing all 3 markets, including Windows 8, with one essential build. And we're committed to sticking with it and writing it as it grows. So I hope that gave a little bit of insight, encouragement for running the Windows 8 market. And I think there may be time. I don't know if there's any questions.
Yes, Susie, we did have a question come through. It was, what resources did you use as you started developing with Windows 8?
Tool resources or actual people resources?
Tool resources, actually, is what we were looking at.
Yeah, and I think really that goes back to Mitch used the Cocos 2DX framework build, and then he used Visual Studio to ultimately. I mean, that's Mitch. Maybe you can type in some comments there if you want to add to it. But ultimately, it was really those two platforms